Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
This is Troy Blakely with APA. I'm on Promoter 101, and I don't know why. I'm not a promoter.
It's Promoter 101. This is episode 41. I'm your captain, Dan Steinberg. Joining us once again as our co-host this week, manager to the stars, Luke Pierce from Works Entertainment. Welcome, Luke.
Dan, very excited about this week on Promoter 101. Joining us a little bit later, we're going to have Ticketmaster's David Marcus. Jane's Addictions manager, the legendary Peter Katsis, is joining us on Promoter 101. It's Christmas in July. And later, we're going to be joined by Barrett Newman for 3 questions.
You know, Luke, I got to tell you, I was told by some of the college students that listen to the podcast that they listen at night now, and they do this as a drinking game. Every time we say Promoter 101, they take a shot. I don't know if you've heard about this, but, dude, they're already 5 shots in, is from my count, just between our opening banter.
Well, it'll be a very, very long night for you kids. Stay tuned.
To Promoter 101.
Hey, this is Rob Zaffarelli.
Patty Ann Tarleton.
Paul Lohr. Phil Rodriguez.
Rick Greenstein.
Donatas Nachayos.
Rob Pellet. Rich Mills. Sasha Bombaji.
Seth Hurwitz. Steve Martin.
Whitney Bond.
This is Trip Brown.
Wayne Forte.
Steve Zapp.
Trevor Solomon.
Live on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101 is heading out on the road, and you can catch us live. We'll be with Scott Chambino from the Triple Door and ICM partners Andrea Johnson as we come to kick off our next leg at the Western Arts Alliance WA Conference in the Emerald City of Seattle, Washington on Thursday, September 7th.
On Thursday, October 12th, we're going to Beantown at the Berkeley Popular Institute in Boston. We're going to be joined by some great guests up there. Be sure to check us out.
Monday, October 16th, we're finally taking it to Music City. We're recording live from IEBA. That's IEBA, y'all. The conference in Nashville, Tennessee.
Make sure you keep up with us on Twitter. Dan is at The Jew. The show's at Promoters 101. That's Promoters, plural. And I'm at W. Luke Pierce.
If you have any thoughts or feedback or there's stuff you want to tell us we're bad at, like, you know, hosting a podcast, hit us up at Steiny at promoter101.net. That's Steiny at promoter101.net.
Be sure to subscribe to Promoter 101 wherever you podcast, and please help us spread the word. Tell a friend about the podcast.
Also, you can also catch up on any of the past podcasts if you missed them at promoter101.net. Man, these kids are going to be getting wasted. We're like 3 minutes in. Also, Luke, I don't know if you caught it, but we reposted our very first episode. It's a new thing we're going to be doing on Fridays is you can catch up on the original episodes if you missed them. Tom Ross, great episode, great storyteller.
Hey, it's Jonathan Shank from Red Light Management on Promoter 101.
It's time for the news of the week. We got some breaking news, Dan, as we're recording this podcast on a lovely Friday afternoon. Warner Music Group announced the purchase of the concert and music discovery assets of the business of Songkick. That's the trademark, the website, and the app of Songkick is going to move under the WMG umbrella effective immediately. The rest of the business, that's the ticketing side, and its lawsuit with Live Nation Ticketmaster will operate independently. Songkick confirmed to our buddy Dave Brooks at Amplify that it is going to be laying off some of its staff. So the future of their ticketing business is very uncertain.
CrowdSearch and Songkick, you know, they're okay at what they do. They had a rocky start. I like some of the people over there, but they started off great and they kind of lost a lot of steam. So maybe these new entities behind them with real money and people that know how to run a company, Warner Music Group talking about, really, really smart. Maybe they can add some life and show those guys how to do it right.
I hope so. I think there's an awesome app. I still use it on my phone a lot when I'm in a city, maybe the night before I have a meeting or an artist I want to see who's playing in town. It's still a great app. It's still a great feature. They've still got 10 or 15 million users out there. So I hope that the mission of discovering new music in your town is continued under the leadership of the Warner Music Group.
All right. Well, personally, I don't think that was big enough to lead with. Let's talk about what should have been the lead story this week. Oakview Group co-founder Tim Lewicki and Irving Azoff announced they're acquiring Polestar July 12th as they opened the Venues Now conference in Los Angeles. This falls under the category of what the fuck?
Dan, this is a big deal. I mean, where is independence in journalism now? I'm not saying that Polestar is going to be out there fudging numbers, but I don't know, how can you not expect Irving and Tim to be influencing the coverage of their businesses? And I think the reality, this deal probably isn't so much about the information and the data that Polestar provides. This is about the conference business, which Oakview has been angling for all this time. And this gives Ray Waddell and the guys over at Oakview Group really something to sink their teeth into. So, Dan, are you going to start scrutinizing coverage from Polestar? Are you going to start thinking twice? Do you think there's really going to be a firewall between Irving and Tim and Gary and the editorial staff at Polestar? You think that's going to exist?
I don't think it's an issue. I mean, Irving does what Irving wants to do, and I don't really think it affects the rest of the industry. The guy's a wrecking force that creates business wherever he goes. He's a genius, and nobody can deny that. Tim, totally groundbreaking, but Polestar is an asset to the industry. They do a great job, and I'm not going to question their reporting. Gary Smith's still deeply involved. You're going to see good things, good news, and I like those guys. But, Dave Brooks is who breaks the news in the industry right now for the most part. That's who I listen to. That's who I believe in. I see it coming from him first usually, don't you?
I'm not going to say that Polestar hasn't been breaking news, but they're usually scooping things that are a few hours behind Dave. Dave is out there as one of the few independent journalists remaining on the Amplify side of things. Obviously, he's got his deal with Billboard in place, but I look to Amplify, I look to Hypebot, I look to Music Business News to break these stories before I look to anything else. In fact, a lot of times the bigger news is even breaking on New York Times or Washington Post. You're seeing major outlets cover the business. So in terms of, the relevance of Polestar as a trade magazine, I got to say I can't imagine that the conference business will be any less important than it is. It is the, keystone winter conference for the live entertainment business. But I got to say, for the editorial side of things, the delivery of news, I am a little bit skeptical about the next steps that Gary and Gary need to take to maintain their independence as journalists under the new ownership of Oakview Group.
I don't know exactly what's going to happen with the Garys on this. I have talked to Gary Smith, and he's definitely staying put, so he'll be at the helm. But I think we can depend on Polestar to still be the news source that breaks news and brings us the information and brings us the data that we've all come to respect and make them one of the industry leaders.
Dan, Kid Rock is running for Senate. He's apparently serious about this. This is a real America. Kid Rock is most likely going to be the first senator to have a sex tape with a guy from Creed. Welcome to the absolutely terrifying new normal in America.
You gotta wonder when the Motor City Madman is going to step up himself and run for an office seat then, because this is going to spread like wildfire, right? Ted Nugent for VP. We're fucked. Is the promoter from Agent versus Promoter MIA? The last few months, we've seen a completely one-sided argument on the posts from Agent versus Promoter, with the past 24 posts being a ratio of 23-1 in the favor of the agent, and over the last 60, the ratio of 57-3 in the favor of the agent. As a fan, I'm concerned about the anonymous promoter from Agent versus Promoter. The posts are something I look forward to. They make my week more exciting, and they make me laugh, and they just make me happy overall. I hope you're okay. Please post something so we know you're still out there and you're doing all right. If you haven't checked out their site yet on Tumblr, it's agentversuspromoter.tumblr.com. Great stuff. If you've not checked this out yet, check it out at agentversuspromoter.tumblr.com. Shit's amazingly funny.
And this, too, as we're talking about this here, Dan, I've got this up on Instagram. They have a great Instagram feed that, Tumblr pushes to as well, too. It's at Agent VS Promoter. A name pops up here. Joe Atamian is listed as the owner of this account. Dan, do you think this is actually Joe, the agent over at Paradigm, or is this somebody fucking with us? I have a feeling this is not really Joe. I mean, it could be Joe Atamian. I always thought it was somebody at Paradigm, like a Sam Hunt-like figure.
It
and
totally fits, man. It totally fits. I've actually accused him in person of this before. Actually, I think we've talked around the podcast. I think it's totally him. That makes sense, but I love that something that small would be the fuck-up. Joe Atanian's photos and videos on Instagram is what comes up at Agent VS Promoter on Instagram. Amazing.
I'm still not 100% buying it. I don't know. I feel like this is like somebody throwing us off the trail. Like Joe seems like a very obvious fit for it, and I feel like he would cover this up. This seems like it's not real to me. Spotify is now 2 for 3 with the big 3. The popular streaming service will close a deal with Sony Music Entertainment later this month, paving a path to its initial public offering or perhaps a direct listing. One way or another, some shares are going to get offered to the public, as we previously discussed on Promoter 101 podcasts. According to Billboard, Spotify is also in ongoing talks with Warner Music Group, which would round out the last of the major label groups to cut a deal with the streaming giant.
Polestar is reporting Triple Eight Management has acquired Nashville-based Good Times, Inc. Good Times founder and CEO Paul Steele and his staff will join the Triple Eight team at their offices in Austin, Texas, and Nashville, Tennessee. The merger brings client Judah and the Lion, Drew Holcomb, and the neighbors, Ellie Holcomb, Chris Allen, and a handful of others to the team. Congratulations to all our friends at Triple Eight for stepping that game up one more time.
We've got a report in that Live Nation has acquired a majority stake in Open Air Frauenfeld, Europe's largest hip-hop festival. It's Live Nation's 7th buyout or equivalent this year, and it follows the acquisition of its controlling stake in the Isle of Wight Festival in the UK this past March.
IQ is reporting that Eventbrite, the world's largest self-service ticketing platform, has launched officially in New Zealand to build on significant organic growth in the country and furthering its Asian Pacific expansion efforts. This on top of them just taking over Ticketfly. These guys are on the fucking move.
It's a shit show over at SoundCloud after 10 years and $200 million in funding. Things are seriously waning over at SoundCloud. TechCrunch and Variety are trading posts this past week about a story that SoundCloud laid off about 40% or 173 of its employees. And according to TechCrunch, those layoffs were mostly in the revenue and creator relations area, which makes everyone's lives a little bit more difficult over at SoundCloud. Seems like they're funded through the fourth quarter of 2017, but the future beyond that remains a little bit uncertain. They may need to have a buyer step in and monetize that company in a way that the current management is unable to do so. We should keep an eye on this because it will definitely affect consumption of music in certain genres, and it'll have a widespread effect if this thing absolutely does fold or gets bought out by another suitor.
Oh, for God's sakes, it's where you're listening to this podcast most likely. It affects the world of podcasts and everybody else, including this actual podcast. It's going to have an effect. And by the way, if anything should happen, you can find us on YouTube, through our website, or through our Spreaker account as well. So you'll never lose us, even if SoundCloud should fold. We'll still be the last man remaining.
This is Anthony Diaz with Six Man. You're on Promoter 101.
When you talk ticketing, it's impossible to have a conversation that doesn't include Ticketmaster. They are the biggest in the business. So this week, we're thrilled to be joined on Promoter 101 with Ticketmaster's own David Marcus. David, welcome to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101, we're at Los Angeles, the Sunset Marquee, and I'm hanging out with the world of Ticketmaster, Mr. David Marcus. Thank you for being here.
Thanks. What's up, Steiny?
I got to know the trail. You left, you came back, and let's start with the early days. How did you even get into the industry?
I always wanted to be in the music business. I was a huge music fan growing up, and came from a family where my dad was a lawyer, and early coming out of college, I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer for some reason. It was going to be my thing.
Did you go to law school?
I did. I went to Berkeley for law school. Grew up in the Midwest. Never been out of Illinois for any real extended period.
What part of Illinois?
I grew up in the northern suburbs of Chicago in Deerfield.
Okay, so Ales or Portillo's?
Al's Beef, all the way. Yeah. I came to LA, started my career as a sort of an intellectual property lawyer at O'Malveny and Myers here in Century City, doing like movie studio stuff, trying to figure out how to be in music. Actually took a music business extension course at UCLA, where I met Vince Bannon for the first time. He was the instructor of the course.
Really?
Yeah. And this guy, Mark Geiger, came in from American Recordings to talk about the internet, which was going to be this amazing thing that artists were going to have their own websites. And this was 1994. And Jamie Loeb came in and she talked about, I don't know, I think she was an assistant at an agency at that point. And like all these people who now are
Jamie, I think was probably at ICM then, yeah.
I think that's right, yeah. All these people who are now my friends in the industry who I first encountered in that space.
What was Professor Bannon like?
He was great. He's Vince, right? You know, he had opinions about everything. He was telling great stories. I think at the time he was GM of 550. For me, it was awesome. Like I was in LA and this was the music business, right? All these people were coming through and I was learning stuff and it was really cool. But it wasn't like even a sliver, right? And I took a detour. I went back to Chicago for 10 years. My wife at the time, her father passed away and we moved back to be in Chicago. And I got really involved in internet and digital music and spent...
Well, Mark Geiger might have been right.
Mark Geiger's always right. I spent a bunch of time working in the digital music space. In 1998 with a streaming radio company, one of the first streaming companies. And Geiger was actually a client of mine. We did Artist Direct Radio. We were their internet radio company. And then I was involved with Music Match in the early days of Music Match and Music Now, AOL, and Yahoo Music, and doing a lot of like label licensing deals and setting up the first subscription streaming deals and businesses, and kind of floated around. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I was still living in Chicago, and a buddy of mine ended up at Ticketmaster as the EVP and head of business development, a guy named David Goldberg. And Goldie called me in 2005 and he said, hey, we have a problem. We still have the Pearl Jam hangover. Artists hate us. We have all this friction, and we need to fix that. I want you to come to LA and help us build an artist services division.
What year is this roughly?
February of 2005. I, at the time, was considering moving to London because Real Networks, Rob Glazer's company, had offered me a gig to be the head of business affairs, ex-US. And I was walking to my office in Chicago, and it was a February day, and I was carrying a grande coffee and my briefcase, and it was freezing. It was absolutely bitterly cold. And I was thinking, man, London or LA, London or LA. And I turned the corner to go into my building and I slipped on black ice, which is like invisible ice,
right.
Like really thin, slick. And I wiped out. And the only thing I thought of on the way down was don't spill the coffee, right? I don't want to be wearing the coffee. I landed on my hip. My shit went everywhere. I didn't spill the coffee. And I looked up and the doorman of the building was like laughing at me. And he was just laughing. He was having such a good time. And I thought, fuck this. I'm going to LA. And 3 weeks later, I was working for Ticketmaster and living in Los Angeles.
It's a pretty big move. And you were with Ticketmaster for quite a while the first time.
You know, it's funny. Meglin was just busting me about, how long do you hold a job? But it's 3.5, 4 years is kind of the run for me. I did Ticketmaster from 2005 to almost 2009. And during that time, we built the Artist Services division, and we were really successful. Like we went from working with maybe a dozen tours when I got there to working with a couple hundred when I left. And we had created a whole bunch of products that are sort of widely used today, from paperless ticketing and platinum album bundles. We built VIP packages into the Ticketmaster system. We built fan club bundles into the system. Tried and failed at auctions, but it was a great experiment. Did the deal with Apple, where we integrated Ticketmaster into the Apple iTunes Chrome and integrated Apple iTunes downloads into every Ticketmaster transaction. And just did a lot of cool stuff. And I think we're relatively successful at repairing much of the damage to the relationship between Ticketmaster and the artist community. And then the secondary market started to get really important to Ticketmaster, and I saw an opportunity to go get more involved with artists. And Tom Wally asked me to come create a 360 position and run 360 over at Warner Brothers Records. And that to me was an opportunity that I couldn't pass up. It was an opportunity to learn the merch business, to learn more about direct-to-consumer e-commerce, and to start to bring my perspective and my interest in bringing artists and fans closer together into a company that worked more directly with artists and was an artist marketing agency fundamentally. I mean, that's what labels are in large part. And I did that at the very end of 2008, beginning of 2009.
And then came back.
No, not quite. I worked for Tom for 2 years, and then I worked for Lear Cohen and ran 360 globally for Warner Music Group for 2 years.
Which has got to be a cool, fun experience.
It was a
to be in a
blast.
building with him anyway.
It was great. He was a lot of fun to be in the room with and build a business with.
To have access to a mind like that on a daily basis is just got to be, the pay has got to be secondary at that point.
It was great. We had a lot of fun, and we were very successful there, building really the record company of the future. I mean, every deal we were doing was 360, and we weren't signing artists unless they signed up to what we call the gold standard 360 deal. And we were just really aggressive and really successful. And that ended when we got bought, and Lior left Warner Music Group. And I left shortly thereafter, and I took a little time off. And then I went and I did a startup with David Goldberg, the guy who brought me to Ticketmaster in the first place. It was a ticketing startup called Score Big, which was Priceline for live entertainment. Great team of people, great business idea, sports focused, so an opportunity for me to learn another industry, related business, and get my entrepreneurial chops. And I did that for 3.5 years. And we were also really successful. We did something nobody else was doing, and we cracked the ticketing business. We became a third-party distributor in an exclusive market before really that was popular, before Ticketmaster was doing that as a matter of sort of core business practice, other than the Groupon deal. And that was great, and that ended at the end of 2016, and that's when Jared Smith from Ticketmaster approached me and asked me to come a new division at Ticketmaster Music.
Okay, so Ticketmaster, I think, has healed what the past reputation was. They've gotten past that in flying colors. And as a client, I never get the question anymore from artists or venues, why are you at Ticketmaster? Which is something, I've been with Ticketmaster for 26 years. So it was something we used to make light of in the older days, and Irving may have given me shit about, but there was a time where it was a funny thing. It was a punchline, and it was okay to get away with. But at the end of the day, we were always with Ticketmaster for one basic reason. I could sleep at night knowing that Ticketmaster had my money. Ticketmaster always paid us.
Yep.
And I lived through Rocky Mountain Teleseats going down at nobody in particular and not getting paid on 2 massive shows, and seeing that happen, and the impact on NIP when they didn't get paid on 2 massive sold-out shows. That'll affect the world. That'll affect our company. I can sleep at night knowing that you're holding my money, because that's big pockets, and that's not going anywhere.
Look, Ticketmaster is a mature and very successful company. And, you know, the old saying, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM. So that's true. And I think we're the best at what we do. I mean, nobody can operate with the scale we can operate with. Nobody can handle the load we can handle. Nobody can sell tickets as fast as we can. Nobody's as reliable as we are. And with all that said, we have a ton of work to do.
You guys are leading the field, and it's fun every time we get to see the new things that are rolling out, or you guys are working on the technology that you guys have decided to stay ahead of. Because you could rest on your laurels, and all along the time you could, and you don't.
And there was a time we did. I mean, you know, there wasn't for a long time a lot of incentive for Ticketmaster to innovate. We were a mature company. We were a cash cow, right? You take the cash out of the business. And there wasn't a lot of competition, at least meaningful competition, for a very long time. That changed, you know, as software became cheaper and cheaper. Ticketing became, therefore, less challenging. As mainframes or VAX machines running ticketing systems were replaced by cloud services and Amazon Web Services, some of the advantages that Ticketmaster historically had weren't as valuable anymore. And I give Jared Smith and Michael Rapino and our CTO, Jody Mulkey, a ton of credit, because they've taken, especially over the last couple of years, a very thoughtful approach for taking a system that is 40 years old and that still does the thing it does so well, which is sell 2,000 tickets a minute and not collapse, and increasingly turn that into something that is a modern both B2B experience and B2B platform and a modern consumer platform. And some of that you're starting to see in the market with our new event detail pages and the new interactive maps we have rolling out and the new fan experience. Our clients are seeing this increasingly on the event programming side. And I think this next 12 months is going to be, both the industry and consumers are going to see some of the most innovative stuff they've seen from us in a very, very long time.
I was begrudgingly bummed to leave Report Pro to go to Ticketmaster One. I learned it. I didn't want to learn a new system until Jeff Carnes had reminded me that at one point the way to do it was to call and ask for the updated counts 3 times a day.
Right.
And the system is better. It takes a minute to get used to anything that changes. There's
a whole profession of people who work in box offices who do command line ticket sales, right? With DOS prompts. That's all going to move over into an interactive, modern, tablet-based point of sale system. And there are going to be some people who are really bummed because they have to learn a new system and they've been doing it for 20 years the way they're doing it.
And there are going to be other people that are stoked that they're going to be able to scale the house on their own as quickly as they want to and roll third and fourth shows without needing to wait for you guys to be able to get to it.
The TM1 stuff is great. And again, I go back to Jared and Jody and the product team they've built at Ticketmaster. Justin Burley on the B2B side and Ishmael Al-Sharif on the B2C side. Guys who are who are building stuff that people want to use based not on what we want it to be, but based on sitting with our clients and our customers and asking them what they want and listening and understanding how they work and understanding how difficult it is to build a show. Right? How many people have to be consulted? How many systems have to be used? And figuring out how to streamline that workflow into something that's modern and collaborative and allows people to focus on the business of live entertainment and not the manufacturing of live entertainment.
You guys are in a weird world where you service 3 or 4 bosses at any given moment. You've got the venue and the promoter, the manager, the agent, and then all the way down the line, most importantly, the fan.
Yeah.
And you're in the middle between all of us. And I feel like there's moments where we're probably all shouting at you simultaneously with different directions.
Yeah. It's not easy, but it's not supposed to be easy.
Because you guys really are the face of the business for all of us, for the bigger artists, to the public.
I'm critical of Ticketmaster because I want to continue to push it forward to make it better. I came back to Ticketmaster because I really believe passionately that we can make it better for fans and artists. We can make the experience of buying a ticket a better experience. And in doing that, we can make ticket buying something you do because you're a fan that has a joyous aspect to it that's like listening to music or watching a video. And it doesn't have to be, oh shit, I got to go buy tickets. This is going to be an anxiety-ridden, disappointment-filled, expensive. I want to get rid of that. Like, it's hard to buy a ticket. It shouldn't be. It should be fun to buy a ticket.
Well, it should be easy. I don't know if it should be fun. I mean, I don't know that it can be fun.
Well, why?
Can it be fun?
Why not?
I get making it easy, but do you really have a vision to make it fun?
Yeah, it should be part of being a fan. It should be a reward. Being able to buy a ticket should be about who you are as a fan and what your relationship is to the artist.
I love the idea of it. People being excited to buy tickets, like the process. I miss waiting in line, camping out to buy tickets. I think that experience got us excited for the show. We earned our good seat.
Great. I'm glad you said that. So that idea of getting in line, that was the way tickets were originally sold. I mean, I remember I'm old enough to have gotten in line at record stores.
Good shows.
Yeah.
It was more important the earlier you went.
Right. And at 10 o'clock in the morning, the record store opened the door or the box office window went up and the line began to be processed. And then somebody said, hey, we can do this on telephones. And so they thought, okay, at 10 a.m. when the doors open for the record stores, we'll also activate the phone lines and we'll just distribute that load and we can sell tickets faster, right? More efficiently. And then in the late 90s, I think it was 96 or 97, someone said, hey, we can do this on the internet. And so at 10 a.m. when the doors open to the record store and we let the phones light up, we'll light up the internet and we can sell more tickets. And over time, internet ticketing became the dominant way with the same exact paradigm as started at the record store in whenever people started selling tickets, right? But that model has a problem when you get in the internet space. And it's actually got 2 problems. The first problem is caused by the fact that the thing we're selling, the ticket, is almost perpetually underpriced relative to its value in the market, okay? So that's problem 1. Then you associate the sale of this thing that is undervalued at the first moment it's sold with a system for selling it that rewards speed. The fastest person in gets the most undervalued ticket that has the most arbitrage opportunity. Well, there's a business there. And that business is investing in software that can harvest those tickets.
You're talking about bots.
Yeah, right? So, or get a room full of people who have 3 browsers open and a half dozen credit cards loaded and get them to buy tickets. Whatever it is, it rewards expert ticket buying and it disadvantages fans.
Let me ask you this as an outsider, as if I was an outsider. Why do you care who's buying the tickets as long as they're buying them?
It's funny.
I know why the artist cares. I'm just curious, and I know you might say you care because the artist cares and he's your client, but I'm curious. I think Ticketmaster cares for a bigger reason.
Yeah, we care because we're a consumer brand. And if you're a consumer brand and you're selling tickets to brokers and consumers are now going to StubHub to buy their tickets, that's where the consumers go. How much longer do you have as a consumer brand before the building starts saying, well, wait, why would I sell tickets through Ticketmaster? Why don't I just sell tickets through StubHub? And that's happening. And for 2003 was when StubHub was launched. So for 14 years, we've been distributing most of the tickets that StubHub's been selling to build a brand that's now worth however many billions it's worth. And Live Nation's a public company. And when we do our quarterly earnings calls, analysts say like, hey, StubHub grew 20x% this quarter. How did your resale business grow? Well, what's StubHub reselling? They're reselling the tickets that we sold the first place. Well, why are they reselling them? Because we do a poor job distributing them, and as an industry, we do a poor job pricing them. So I can't fix the pricing problem.
Managers and promoters control that.
Right. I can influence it, and I can provide tools, and I can provide insight, and I can provide expertise, and I can help them understand how to better price the first time, and I can give them the tools that allow them to do that. But at the end of the day, I don't make that decision. But what I can do is I can start to introduce ways to sell tickets that aren't based on speed. I can start to sell tickets based on not when the transaction happens, but who conducts the transaction. That's what Verified Fan, which is this program we launched in the last 5 or 6 months, is all about, and is the very first sort of insight into, which is, who are you? Are you a fan? Or are you someone who's going to go to the show? Or are you someone who's going to flip the ticket?
rolled this out, right?
We rolled it out with the Dead. Actually, Dead & Company was the first artist to do Verified Fan, late November 2016.
But Linkin Park just did it last month, right?
Linkin Park just did it last month. Linkin Park did the version 2 of it. Version 1 is fans come and register their intent to go to the show. They create a Ticketmaster account or log in with their Ticketmaster account. They give us their mobile phone number and their email address, and they tell us what show they want to go to. And then we run a bunch of algorithms on that data set in the background and distinguish the people who we expect to go to the show, likely to use the ticket, from people who give us signals that suggest they are a reseller. And we obviously have a massive database of resellers. We're the biggest distributor to resellers in the world. We sort of look at that binary condition, are you likely to use or likely to flip? And we invite those likely to use to a pre-sale with a unique code, so that keeps the bots out. So Verified Fan, right? People who we believe to be fans have an opportunity to compete. It's still time-based against other fans for tickets. Version 2 of that is, okay, you're in the pool of verified fans. How big a fan are you? Are you going to promote the registration through Facebook and Twitter? Did you buy the album? What configuration of the album did you buy? And we put those fans through a little bit of a gamification engine. You asked me a few minutes ago, how do you make it fun again? We get the fans involved, and we get them rewarded for the things that fans do. They listen to music. They buy music. They talk about their favorite artists on Facebook. They talk about their favorite artists on Twitter. They get their friends to participate, and they engage in fan behavior. And when you do that, you're rewarded by getting better access to tickets. So, hey, Steiny, you invited 27 friends in. You bought the super deluxe configuration of the album. You've been listening to Linkin Park on Spotify since the beginning of time. They're your number one artist. You're going to be, in the top 10% of the people, the first 10% of the people who invited in, which will give you the best access to the best tickets.
And the algorithm does all that.
Yeah, it's really fun. And the prospects are really exciting. I mean, if you're a promoter, which you are, think about the power of knowing how much demand you have before you ever put ticket one on sale. Think about knowing whether or not you have a sold out show on your hands, or you've got to deploy some marketing capital and get people involved and interested. Think about knowing how many shows you might have before you sell that first ticket, right? And having that decision to roll now is a much easier decision and a less fraught sort of find the moment, get it going, don't lose the momentum decision. You know what you've got going in. Think about pricing decisions. You got 2 arenas worth of demand. You might price differently than if you have a quarter arena worth of demand. You can start doing really cool things with individualized pricing. You can do the same thing in premium ticketing. You're an artist, you're worried about the impact of a premium ticket. How about if I send you a text, Steiny, before the show ever goes quote unquote on sale that says, hey, I know you're a huge Linkin Park fan. I've got an amazing ticket just for you. 2 tickets, side stage, on the aisle, 4 rows back. They're $199 each. Now, Linkin Park doesn't want to sell their tickets for $199 on the map. It's a bad brand look. But I can sell them just to you because I know you're a super fan. And when I look back at all your ticket transactions,
digitally tap on my shoulder.
Digitally through an SMS. And you can just say, great, I'm in, right? Yes, put those in my account.
That's Ticketmaster Platinum.
That's Ticketmaster Future. It's not Platinum yet.
But it's where Platinum's going, right?
I think it's where ticketing's going. right? And now in a connected world where you create an account and a profile at Ticketmaster and you connect your Spotify to it or your Apple Music or your Pandora, whatever, and you're just out there being a fan, the behaviors you undertake that are about being a fan can now inform the kind of access you get when it's time to buy something that's scarce. The worst thing we hear is, fuck you, Ticketmaster. I'm the biggest fill-in artist name here fan, and I couldn't get a ticket. I don't want to be in that business. Nobody at Ticketmaster wants to be in that business.
Nuts. I got to imagine the Adele thing was a nightmare for you guys, being that there just wasn't enough supply and you guys couldn't control that.
Yeah,
but you guys were the face of the ticketing company. Yeah,
I wasn't there for Adele, but I was there for Harry Styles, right?
Same thing. Right?
Same thing, right? And the fans...
By design, because they played theaters automatically, there was never going to be enough tickets.
Never going to be enough tickets. And we had, I can't talk about how many registrations we had, but there was 10 times as much demand as there was supply.
If only there was another arena tour coming.
The fans don't know. They just assume, not even that this is it, that in that moment, and we're talking about teenage girls,
right?
That in that...
This is the Beatles to them.
Oh my God, right?
Yeah.
The Twitter posts were literally, they're insane. I mean, young girls are insane, just biologically insane. Imagine what happens when they don't get a Harry Styles ticket. It was insanity. But we eat all that shit. It's all on us, right? There's another...
As the industry, I want to thank you guys for that. That's awesome.
And that's funny too, because it's a real thing. Right?
Like, I'm not discounting it. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah. And
I don't want those phone calls, and I'm stoked they call you.
Right? And the artists do too. The artists are happy to lay that on us. So to some extent, there's some value in that for us. To another extent, like I never had heard about a negative net promoter score. Do you know what a net promoter score is?
I don't.
It has nothing to do with concert promotion. Net promoter score is an index that looks at how many people think you're awesome, promote your brand, how many people are detractors, and how many people are neutral. And you
So it's like an Uber score?
Yeah.
Like your Uber rating?
And like you subtract the detractors from the promoters, and that gives you your net promoter score. I've never been at a company that had a negative net promoter score. Like the net promoter score for Ticketmaster was like minus 95 after Adele, because we're in this business of disappointment, and people, they just heap that upset on us. I mean, Garth Brooks deals with that head on, right? Garth Brooks is like, I don't need Ticketmaster to take the shit. I mean, he doesn't do it because of us, but he goes into a market and he just adds show after show after show after show until everybody who wants to see him for $69 can come see a Garth Brooks show for $69. Adele's not going to do that. Harry Styles is not going to do that. And we end up being the disappointment agent.
We take a minute and talk about the competitors in the field. And I'm not going to ask you to break down each competitor by any means. But because software is easier and easier to write and people have gotten better at this over time, there are a million different ticketing companies that exist now. And any of them that have been able to find capital are out there like writing checks to clubs and venues and promoters trying to bring them in. There's a lot of them that are GA that have the simple platform that can't compete with Ticketmaster at this level. And then there's a handful of others that have made it to the next level where they've gotten more complex and can do reserve. But with the number of ticketing companies that exist now, how has that changed the field?
I think the most important thing, the value of competitors is that they make you better. And I attribute a fair amount of the innovation and the urgency to innovate at Ticketmaster to increasing competition. So it's a good thing. It requires that we differentiate our business not just based on the features that we offer, but also the services we offer. And I think there's a lot of things about Ticketmaster that are unique, not the least of which is our scale. And that allows us to go out and be, when we talk to any given building, be something that's more than just a collection of technology and a check, right? We can be something that artists really value and are looking for. And I think that that's really important and a really important differentiator for us.
And a lot of them don't have the technology, and most of them won't last forever. It'll be a thing, and some of them will. And I was really excited to see what could have happened with Pandora and Ticketfly coming together, because I thought if that had been utilized correctly, that there could be some next level ways to contact fans. And they were able to do some of them, but I don't think with the amount of time that they're going to hold on to that asset as a ticketing company that they're going to be able to roll out near the things that Andrew had in his mind.
It was a really interesting combination. It was not dissimilar from the Clear Channel Entertainment Live Nation, or Clear Channel Radio Live Nation acquisition back in 2000, whenever that was.
Yeah, there's certainly some synergy to that.
Right, that was the thinking. Pandora Ticketfly is the digital version of that.
Right, and on the same side, if you guys were in business with Spotify, like the ability to like push out to people that are buying tickets would be an amazing thing to me, trying to reach my fans to sell them tickets.
I think the opportunity to connect ticketing to listening is amazing. And I think there's a lot of a lot we can do there and a lot of fun we can all have there. You know, it's big companies, and so it takes a minute for those deals to come together. But I'm really eager to get us into that in a really meaningful way with some meaningful partnerships.
Because it seems like the future.
It kind of seems like the present. I mean, like, you know, it's a thing we should all be better at. The reason I have a job at Ticketmaster now is because Jared and Amy Howe and Michael decided that it was time to orient the business towards the verticals we served. Whereas previously we were exclusively a product-driven company, ticketing products and ticketing systems with a client services organization, but we were serving buildings sort of irrespective of the vertical ecosystem we were operating in. A sports ticket and a music ticket are different because the relationship between the content and the fan and the expectations of the fan are just different. The experience of buying a sports ticket is totally different than the experience of buying a music ticket. There's a little more fungibility in sports tickets. Like your team is there 80 or 40 times a year, right? You can trade the St. Louis game for the Kansas City game anytime, right? Like, pick your team. When do you want to go, right? For music, most of these artists come through once every 18 months, 2 years. Yeah, give or take, right? There's only 12,000 seats to choose from. Where you sit makes a big difference. So,
interesting concept. I know that some ticketing companies have gotten to the point where they sell golf tee times and camping places. And
Ticketmaster used to have a camping business called Reserve America, right? Because if you're thinking about the category of ticketing, it's just about turning transactions. It's a scale business. How many widgets can I push through the machine? Because the more widgets I push through, the more efficiency I get and the more margin I make. You get to a certain point where you think, wait, there's money to be made in doing this thing uniquely well.
Before I let you go, what's the thing that Ticketmaster is working on that you're excited about that we haven't talked about yet? Because I know there's these mind-blowing facts that you guys always have these great things that are coming. What's coming next that we don't know about yet?
One of the really cool things that's coming is, and it's rolling out in some major buildings right now. We'll be in 50 buildings, 50 of our highest traffic buildings by the end of this year. It's Presence. And it's a new access control system that moves tickets from PDF barcode land into cell phone, right? A personalized ticket. Steiny, here's your ticket. Open your app. Ticket gets downloaded into your app. You walk into the venue, walk by the Presence, wave your phone at the Presence machine, and the turnstile lets you in. Everybody's got their own pass. You and I are going to a show. You buy the tickets. You send me a text, David, here's your ticket. I click the link. Ticket downloads into my app, and now I've got my ticket.
It's almost like having the bracelet at the festival.
Totally. And now you're the artist, or the promoter, or the venue. And now you know every single person who's in the building.
Not just a fourth of them or a half of them.
Yep. You can message them. Hey, Steiny, I see you're at the back of the house. Come on up front. We've got a special upgrade for you. Or, I see you're at the back of the house. For everyone in this venue, the shortest beer lines are here, right? Like, you can start communicating. Before the show, I can communicate with you. After the show, I can communicate with you.
I don't have to open my app. I have them through your system.
So we can really start to close the loop. And now next time the artist comes through, you, the promoter, know exactly who went to the last show. Every single person who went to the last show, not just the ticket buyers.
It's genius. It's next level.
It's really fun. It brings it all together.
You guys are going to be able to roll that out in the next year.
It's rolling out. We have a venue in Orlando Soccer Club in Orlando, Florida. Their building is 100% presence, 100% digital tickets. There are no paper tickets. There's no fraud at box offices anymore. No one walks up with a barcode they bought, a PDF they bought that's no good because somebody Xeroxed it and sold it to them through Craigslist. It doesn't happen anymore.
Visionary. Before I let you go, can I ask you about Amazon?
Yeah.
It seems like they're not going to be a competitor in the market, but they're going to be an add-on resource to get to millions of people.
Yep.
Is that how you guys see them?
Yep.
They've rolled out in London, so we're already kind of experiencing this a little bit.
You know, my sense is that they don't have any real aspiration to be a box office solution. They're a retailer. And I think that the way the ticketing market is moving and where we're moving as a business is, you know, we want our clients to be able to sell as many tickets as they can sell to fill their buildings. We're open to working with all kinds of partners. We work with Groupon, we work with Bands in Town, we work with Spotify, we work with Game Time. We just announced a deal with where we're distributing tickets to Game Time. You know, we believe that you find the fans where they are, and if there are retailers that occupy particular areas of expertise, Amazon's amazing at knowing their customers, right? Prime is a incredible customer benefit. If they can help our clients, we're interested in empowering them. Whether or not we do a deal with Amazon, you know, remains to be seen.
Thank you so much for taking the time, man. I really
Pleasure.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
David is simply impressive. I could talk to him for hours. He's one of the great minds of our industry.
My name is Reese Ryan Steinberg, and you can watch my daddy on Promoter 101.
Let's check in on Dan's Promoter 101 tweets from this past week. You were pretty active this week, Dan. Is there anything that didn't get in your crosshairs? Let's start with this one. When a show is completely settled out before doors, hashtag sold out.
This is the best feeling in the world. You get to relax and enjoy the show like you're a fan.
When a venue's house nut is actually more than the show can gross at a real ticket price.
I don't want to point any fingers out, Philadelphia, but whoa. Seriously, did you think about leaving anything for the artist? Maybe we could develop the artist together and then we could move them into your bigger venues and then we could think about fleecing them. Just an idea.
When you've been holding off a challenge and the agent you have been protecting from informs you that he hasn't told management yet.
You're killing me, Smalls. Killing me.
Could there possibly be any more traffic on the road this fall?
The fall is crazy busy, as per usual.
That does it for Promoter 101 Tweets the Week. You can always follow Dan on Twitter at The Jew.
This is Stephen Riff from Embrace Presents in Toronto, Canada, and I'm stoked to be on Promoter 101.
It's time once again for 3 questions where listeners can come on the show and get to ask us any 3 questions they'd like. Industry, professional, whatever they want. Most importantly, we haven't seen the questions in advance.
This week, we're joined by longtime ticketing professional, Mr. Barrett Newman. Barrett, welcome to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101, 3 questions. We're joined by Barrett Newman, who's known to the ticketing world. It's good to have you here, my friend. Thanks for joining us on 3 questions.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So what do you got for me and Luke today?
Okay. Well, I want to know, when you're adding shows by popular demand, what's the percentage of those that are already planned, meaning you're just waiting for the right time to roll over into the added show, versus a sale when you're like, holy shit, this is selling great, we need to add?
Well, I mean, it's certainly industry standard to do a 1+1 when you think there might be a second show there, or even when you know there is. But if you're absolutely positive, more often than not, you'll roll both shows from the get-go. But when you want to just be 100% sure because the act doesn't want to play a half house on one night and a full house on another, it's not uncommon to put the first one up and see what the demand is and often reevaluate from that moment with the manager, agent. Sometimes the act sounds off too. What's everybody thinking? Sometimes you'll get the radio station involved, some of the local bloggers, depending on what kind of show it is, and really take everyone's temperature, see how strong the demand is before you roll that second show. There are other times where we absolutely know we're rolling 2. Sometimes we think we might be rolling 3. It's definitely one of those things where it's act by act and scenario by scenario and venue capacity. And sometimes it's for the love of the room. It's like, we love this room. We know we're worth more tickets. Let's see how many we can roll through. And then it has to do with the venue avails too. Luke, what about you? You have any insight there for us?
From my perspective, I think it's all about what you're trying to achieve with the initial offer. If you're taking the offer as a manager, as an agent, in a 1+1 situation where you think you might blow through the first show, for me, I like to see, anywhere above 60 to 70% of tickets go during the on sale, knowing that we're going to fully blow that out and then immediately prep to get the second one on sale. But if it's a show where it might be an underplay for you and you blow through, I think you have to step back and say, what is our objective in the marketplace? What are we doing in other comparable markets? Are we leaving money on the table in this situation? Do we need that second show? I don't want to turn, one winner into 2 losers by any means. And sometimes you have to evaluate what that demand is.
It seems from the podcast that you often feel that a telephone call is often the best way of ensuring good business. But what do you see as the preferred mode of communication these days, especially for industry folks in their 20s and 30s?
The world is moving to email. There's no question. And texting and even Facebook Messenger is how business is now done in some cases. I think there's nothing better than a face-to-face communication because you are always going to want to work with people that you get along with better and that you enjoy hanging with. And people that take the time to connect with you, they're always going to win over just a random email address that pops out. I think the phone is definitely underutilized and good business happens on the phone. You can definitely hear a better tone. You know what someone's saying, and it's much harder to say no to someone on the phone than it is in person, as my friend Don Holliday would normally tell us. So I'm a fan. Luke, what about you?
For me, I think that The phone call is certainly a lost art. Not a lot of people tend to work the phone. It's a lot of email. I'm doing more and more business on iMessage and text now than I ever have, especially with clients that don't prefer to email. I communicate sometimes with artists and radio programmers occasionally on Twitter direct message or Instagram direct message. It's all about what the preferred format of the end user on the other end of it is using. My experience, the younger crowd, many millennials, many Gen Z folks are really gravitating towards direct messages as an acceptable form of communication. I prefer a mix of phone with immediate email follow-ups, kind of recapping conversations. Phone is a great way to build rapport with people. Emails, one way where you leave a lot of tones that are unsaid or uncertain, whereas I don't really necessarily get that in a phone call. So if I'm teeing something up that might be a big picture idea that might be really verbose, I'll take, 5-7 minutes, talk it through on the phone and try to dial that into some sort of summary in an email. And depending on if I'm communicating with clients or venues or production managers, I might be using iMessage all day, which I have open all the time.
Awesome. What's your last question?
Yeah, it's something personal. What's one thing in your laptop bag or suitcase that pretty much is unique to you? It could be like a totemistic or sentimental item or something super practical that you think just isn't in widespread use.
Luke, why don't you take that one first, my friend? I'm a little curious.
This is weird, but I always have nail clippers in my briefcase. I don't know. I hate anytime my nails are long. I don't bite on my nails or anything like that, but anytime the moment my nails get a little bit too long, I hate to clack into them on keyboards. I'm weirdly weirded out by that. I hate the way it feels when I type. So I'm constantly clipping my nails, which might be a weird thing to have in a bag. I don't know. Dan, do you have any weird shit in your bag?
I personally have power adapters for European and international markets in my bag, and I know probably there's some tour managers that have that too, but I've gotten used to just making sure that's always in my bag, so when I land somewhere, I can go, and more often than not, it's now becoming a what country are we in, and what kind of power do I need to run off of kind of thing. So that's possibly unique to me. I also usually have a handful of different random Emporium swag, may it be a yo-yo or a foam Promoter 101 microphone. Great. Well, hey, man, thank you so much for joining us on 3 Questions this week. We really appreciate Barrett.
Yeah, keep doing what you're doing, enjoy the summer, and rock on.
Thanks for joining us on Promoter 101, Barrett, for 3 Questions. If you'd like to be asking us the questions on 3 Questions on an upcoming episode of Promoter 101, please email us at steiny@promoter101.net.
This is John Schultz. I'm Windish.
Charlie from Crescent Ballroom.
Craig Newman.
Dave Brooks.
Dave Chumley here.
Dave Ratner.
John Holiday.
Ted Bicknell.
LX.
Imong Shah.
Celia Lefko.
Gerald B. Henley.
Harlan Fry here.
Jack Ross.
Jason Miller.
Jeffrey Fox.
Joe Escalante.
Blair LeBlanc. Martin Atkins.
Neil Dixon.
Nick Farkas.
Paula Palazzo.
And I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101!
Next up, Culture Club and Jane's Addiction is just a small list of careers this iconic manager has been responsible for. We're thrilled to bring you the great Peter Katsis to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101, we're at the Sunset Marquee. I'm with legendary manager Peter Katsis. Thank you so much for being here, Peter.
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, these are certainly legendary bungalows if the walls could talk.
Yeah, there's probably no better place that we could be doing this. So you've got an epic career, but let's talk about the early days. How did you get into the business?
I was one of those guys that started out in college. I was the student promoter for the Activities Council at Southern Illinois University, fabulous Carbondale, Illinois, which is close to St. Louis, and did very well and fell in love with the business at the same time. I was there as majoring in film production and thought I wanted to direct movies, but I was starting to book a concert a week, and everybody played for us at the school there. Back in the day, it was all on the rock side and the alternative side, it was like the Ramones, Talking Heads, Pretenders, English Beat. And then on the jazz side, it was like, Jean-Luc Ponty and Pat Metheny and, Chick Corea and Stanley Clark. And
guys that could play.
Exactly. We'd also do stuff like Arlo Guthrie and, Steve Goodman or, stuff like that. So I got the fever, as you might say, and got offered a couple of jobs in New York, William Morrison ICM in the mailroom, which was, certainly scary back then. They used to pay about $9-10 a year. And then the guy in Chicago called me up and said, why are you going to move to New York and work for 10 grand a year. He goes, I'd make you an agent right out of school. And I was like, not an assistant, an agent. You're going to make me an agent. And he said, yeah, I'll make you an agent. And I said, wow. All right, well, how much are you paying? And he said, 26 grand a year. And I said, I guess I'm moving back home, which, I might have seen some regrets in that later, or some advice I might give some young guys out there.
And what would that advice be?
There's certainly not much of an industry in Chicago. Let's put it that way, even though there's a lot more now than there was back then. But it was a cool little agency, and the other agents there were guys by the name of Chip Hooper, Gary Buck, and Ron Kaplan. So all four of us are certainly still quite active. And Chip, obviously, we lost, but he certainly went on to do some pretty amazing things in the business before he did leave. But it was a great learning place. I also learned that I didn't want to be an agent, and I started managing ministry on the side. The band kind of found me in a club, and I had known the drummer went to high school with me, basically.
Is that a Chicago connection?
Yeah. Stephen George was the drummer in ministry at the time. Also went to Oak Park High, right? So he bugged me in a club one night to come out to a car and listen to a tape of theirs. And they put their cassette in my car and said, wow, this is amazing. So we decided I was going to manage the band. And I was doing that while I was working as an agent. And, the agency was, it was a cool little agency. We had some Chicago acts like Survivor, and we had Scott Cameron out, who was famous for managing Muddy Waters and Willie Dixon. And we were doing dates on Willie for him. And we were also doing dates on like Buddy Guy at the time. And so we had a cool little list of acts that we were doing.
Some amazing blues acts.
We also signed I signed some New York acts while I was there too, like just some really kind of offbeat stuff like James Chance and the Contortions and Defunct and a lot of different bands.
You had a really diverse musical taste, huh?
Yeah, we did. But, it was funny because it still all kind of stemmed from, as much as we were into punk rock and new wave and all that stuff, we started out as kids listening to classic rock, and certainly the 70s classic rock really imprinted a lot of legendary type artists into our heads. I think the things that we strove to grow into were always affected by that, a lot of us. But yet we still had that spirit of rebellion because punk rock kind of added a whole new juice to that at the end of the 70s there when I was in college. But that's where it started.
Which punk rock bands were you into?
I was into literally everything, but certainly the Clash was my favorite. But the Pistols and the Ramones and...
So you were in early.
Oh, yeah, we were in early. I think my haircut changed every year between 76 and 82. So
that's incredible. You started with the management with ministry. What brought you out of the agency and fully this is going to be my thing?
It was being closer to the music. It was feeling as if things that you did on behalf of the artist really had a true impact on culture and on the artist's career. It's not like that you can't also get some of that out of being an agent, because you certainly can. You could really help shape an artist's career as an agent as well. But there's just something about you're that much closer to the music as a manager.
Okay, so after ministry, who else did you pick up?
There was a young kid named Nicholas Tremulous that I got signed to Island and, met Chris Blackwell and some amazing people doing that. And then, interestingly enough, house music started. And I still had my agent's license, so I was representing a lot of the house acts. And that was kind of getting me to New York and London on a regular basis. It was this rare thing where Chicago was importing music that the world wanted. And I was someone that was just connected to the scene enough to know where it was. So I was doing a little bit of everything.
Like the early days of techno with the house music?
Yeah, all the Marshall Jefferson and Adonis and all the early house acts that started, in the 82 type era. That was right when I was getting out of school. So, and what's kind of interesting is at the time, as much as I wanted to do management, you had to actually pay your bills too. So I was doing it any way I could. I was, at one point, I was booking house acts in New York and London. I was either promoting or booking shows in Chicago. I was the talent buyer for the Metro for Shanahan. It was his first talent buyer. I think he paid me $400 a week.
Which became one of the coolest clubs in the country.
Well, yeah, that was pretty amazing. Then I was managing ministry at the same time. So basically, the management thing was probably making me the least amount of money, but it still was where my heart was. But on the other hand, I think I was definitely one of those kids that was just attracted to the scene as well and attracted to cool stuff that, at the Metro, the opening week at the Metro was REM on Wednesday, Billy Idol on Friday, Divine on Saturday, and the Tubes on Sunday.
That was what, 82, 83?
Yeah. And guess what show sold out?
The Divines?
The Divine show sold out. Actually, if I remember right, it might have even been like a 7:30 and 10:30. We sold them both out.
In all fairness, I only guessed that because you asked me, because with the look of you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
And the other two is who I would have gone with had you not said it that way.
Absolutely. Well,
so just to call it out.
I wouldn't, because I'm such a huge fan, I wouldn't want to say REM Stiff, but
it was early though.
It was
just
early.
hadn't happened yet.
Absolutely. No one knew who they were yet. So
before we move off of Chicago, I ask all my Chicago guests, which the industry is full of.
Yeah.
Is it Portillo's or is it L's?
Wow. I wasn't much of a dog guy. I'd probably say Portillo's. I think I could talk deep dish pizza better than that.
Well, where do you hit?
I'd say now go to Art of Pizza on Ashland.
Better than Gino's?
Better than all of them.
Nice.
The Art of Pizza.
Where's it at?
Ashland and near Belmont.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
When you made the jump from Chicago to LA, when did that happen?
That happened in 90. So Chicago, I just kind of reached my limit. I was booking shows at the Riviera Theater and I was managing bands, but it just felt like there wasn't enough industry there at the time. I was doing some shows with Jeff Quatnitz at the time, and then we came out to LA together in 91.
Okay, and the management thing for Ministry must have really been starting to kick off at that time because it was about to enter Land Rate by Honey right around that time?
Yeah, what happened on the Ministry side, Elliot Roberts ended up taking over management and hired me back to do, so, basically I kind of got bought out of my contract and got hired there. That was in the middle, it was like 85, something like that. I'm a little sketchy on these years sometimes, but basically at the time, Lookout was probably set the mold for the modern corporate management company where Elliot just had some great guys there like Billy Gerber doing Devo and Ministry and Steve Berkowitz doing the Cars and Tony Dimitriadis was doing Petty and stuff like that.
Tony D.
You know what I mean? So he had some amazing young people working there, and obviously I was looking to learn, but one thing I was finding already, it was a little, I don't know whether I was too headstrong or whether often I wouldn't agree on the direction they wanted to take the band in. And so, I just parted companies and went back to, booking the Metro and then booking the Riviera Theater. So yeah, it was a kind of a stumbling block, let's say that, but it always made me want to come back to management. It gave me just enough of a taste, got me out to both coasts, and really made me know that all that much more that I wanted to do management.
Okay, so who was next for you when Ministry went away? What was the next thing?
When we came out here, we were working with Material Issue from Chicago. There's another beautiful young man we lost named Jim Ellison. Tuck and Patty.
Had a moment.
Yeah, and, some various other acts. I remember I signed the Cramps when I first got out here for a short time. And
the punk rock thing just kept running through your veins.
I still love alternative music at this point. So, but that was along the way. If you ever really had a chance to work with any of your heroes like that, it was part of what made it really special. Really, So certainly the Cramps were, one of my favorite bands, and certainly Ministry had become one of them as well. I was always attracted to the subversive side of things a little bit more, let's say.
What do you mean by that?
The rebellious spirit of rock and roll, right? I mean, that's something that we all started with, let's say. But, throughout time, I would say I was attracted to the darker side of that, or the more underground side of that. The more subversive, the better. I mean, and it hasn't really stopped, even though, there's stuff on my Wikipedia. I certainly did some amazing things with the Backstreet Boys, right? I just managed the Death Grips not that long ago. And certainly that was probably the most subversive band of the last 10 years.
That's pretty cool. Let's jump ahead to, how did the firm come together? Like, how did that was a big piece of the world, right?
We were at Gallon Morey briefly, and Sandy Gallon and Jim Morey were two pretty amazing guys, to say the least, but certainly giants in our business. They were doing something rather unique at that point. It was film and music, and it was, they had Neil Diamond, Dolly Parton, Michael Jackson, and then they also had, Nicole Kidman and Renee Zellweger and Kathleen Turner and Rupert Everett. They were managing film stars and music stars, and we went there to learn specifically, how to play at the top of the game.
It was like going back for your masters?
Yeah, exactly. And we had signed Korn and Limp Bizkit at that point. And, obviously they were about to break and get into arenas. And who better to learn the arena business from than Jim Morey and Neil Diamond? You know what I mean? Like, who better to get involved with your first 26 truck tour than to see it like that. So
the people that can figure out how to manage Michael Jackson seriously know what's going on in a business.
Absolutely, because we tried that a little bit later and we weren't very successful once we were on our own as a firm. That's kind of where the idea for the firm started, and that's where we met Michael Green as well. The three of us were working there, and he was doing comedy at the time. Martin Lawrence, Sandra Bernhardt, Richard Lewis. So Galen Morey had all that. They had comedy, film, music. So to be able to see that, a lot of intersection between just managing artists, period,
Especially when you've got a crossover artist like Dolly Parton that's playing on both sides of the field.
Absolutely. Just the nature of seeing what those deals looked like on both sides came in handy when we did blow up the firm, later on.
Yeah,
So.
you guys had an amazing run. There's a great team there. How did that come together?
When we left Galen Morey, obviously, it was just me, Michael, and Jeff that started it. I think it just grew. We started working with some great acts. It just grew to be...
arguably, you guys had some of the biggest acts in rock that were the arena and stadium headliners all at once. It was like you guys in Q Prime were the world of
It was
that.
an amazing list. The difference was probably that Q Prime kind of kept it on the rock side, and we clearly weren't afraid to go into pop, into... other areas.
Learning from your master's class.
Well,
you
yeah,
just taking that there was business that was intersecting on all sides, on all levels.
And to be honest, it's funny because, there was probably some point where I would have told myself I was a rock guy, I was a subversive rock guy. I loved, Iggy and the Stooges. Where does the Backstreet Boys fit in or something like that? But there is also an aspect of show business that you really fall in love with. You know what I mean? Like when you're putting gigantic arena shows together and when you're involved with how to market them and you're finding ways to, let's say, break records and do interesting things, really touch a lot of people, basically, is probably the biggest part of that. It's kind of hard to beat. There's some aspect of it that will make all styles of music really appeal to you, basically. So even though I started out as a rock guy, I certainly didn't, but I'd like to think that I was always trying to put a little bit of that rock and roll into those big pop shows.
In that big pop show arena world, security has become a massive issue, and we're recording this the week of Manchester happening.
Yeah.
And obviously it's, the second time in as many years as the industry has faced some very scary security issues.
Yep.
When you're talking about putting that many people in one place, as a manager, how are you addressing that with your act and with your promoters? Because there's only so much you control. It's an act of madmen. At the same time, I know you guys feel responsible for your fans.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can do?
I'd say you have to stay relentless as much as possible. You have to spend whatever you need to spend on great security. You have to make sure that they're really doing, if everybody is doing their job, you are really cutting down on the possibilities. You know what I mean? Like between the venue, the security company, your security guys, if everyone is doing their job in every aspect of it, from, the advance, from the pre-event meetings, the whatever it is, the actual fundamentals, let's say, if everybody's staying on top of it, you are cutting down the chances.
Because you can't really control what happens outside.
Yeah.
And in the case of what happened with Eagles of Death Metal in Paris,
yes,
it's a pretty small club.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's much we're going to be able to do security-wise to
right.
prevent that, because a club equivalent to the side of the Metro. It's like, how much security is there really with this? There's not pat-downs and wandings. I mean, there might be a little bit of pat-downs, but they're not much.
Yeah. Whenever you're in a club, you are always conscious of the budget that actually runs those clubs. At the very basic core of what happens in a club versus an arena, you could see if the promoter's cutting corners, if there's not quite enough guys on, if the doorman he does have on are a little lackadaisical. It's funny, sometimes, we've seen...
Do promoters cut corners, Peter?
Well, indeed, sir. But we all do. Let's face it. The business people talk about
the bottom line.
Record sales are gone, so you guys still make money touring and selling T-shirts. Yeah, but often we're still trying to, cut corners, smaller crews. All of a sudden, there's, the tour managers, the production managers, the tour accountant. You're definitely at the club level Everyone's wearing a lot of hats, but that doesn't really mean that you could be any less conscientious. Certainly, if you're going into Paris and you know there's been some activity there, that's the time where you have to say, okay, yeah, we've been cutting corners, but today we're going to hire an extra security guard, or today I'm not going to touch my tour accounting. I'm just going to concentrate on what's going on at the door. You do actually have to take the time to think about, from any level that you're at, club to arena to stadium, you have to take the time to think about what market you're in, what's different about that market, and who you're working with. Do you know them well? Can you count on the people there? Have you worked with that crew before? If you can't answer yes to all those questions, you probably have to compensate in those areas. And that's something that you got to realize. Yes, it's not easy, and yes, budget does come into play, but common sense dictates so much of whatever we do.
So going from tour development levels, when you go from the club to the arena to the stadium, and you've developed acts all the way up through those different levels, when do you know it's okay to go from a van to a bus and from a trailer to a semi? And when is it okay to add a tour accountant? When do you know that those expenses are an okay add-on?
You know, I mean, there's probably a few different things to look at. Certainly, you're getting into it with the business manager. You're making budgets. You're looking where you're going. You're forecasting what's going on. It's a business, just like any other business. So that's obviously a big part of it. On the other hand, as far as personnel goes, that's a different story. It's a little trickier. I think we all often have to look at, especially if you're going to start talking about personnel wearing more than one hat, you're going to need to think about, sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes you want to do that. Sometimes a certain personality of a band dictates that a certain type of tour manager will do better for you, but he's not a great tour accountant, but he could handle production. You kind of mix and match this stuff almost like a jigsaw puzzle, and it's not the best way to do things. The best way to do things is always be well funded and prepared, but it is rock and roll. Sometimes you're forced to punt on fourth down, let's face it, and you're working with people. You can't forget, it's a people business and it's the service business, so you have to really take a lot of thought about who are the people you're working with, who are the guys in the band, who do they fit with, who can really help them, where do they need help, what are they good at themselves. Everything starts from the music, so everything starts from the band. And then from there, you figure out exactly what parts of the puzzle you need to add. You're mixing ingredients here. It's like a cake.
Now, you've worked in the industry from the time where MTV was relevant, and if you broke a video, your act was off to the races, as well as from the point where if you broke a single on radio, you were off to the races. And now you can't really depend on either. MTV doesn't exist in that format anymore. And radio, I would argue, doesn't really exist in that format either.
You're still dealing at a time, and people, let's not forget, even though 85% of people don't get to discover music at radio, at least 50% still do. So it's relevant. So it's still important.
Can I go back to that percentage? 85% don't, but 50% do?
No, in our day, back in the, let's say, 2000 era, okay, 85% of people heard a new song for the first time at radio.
Okay.
Now that percentage is about 50, but it's still 50. So let's not forget about the impact of radio.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah. So I think it's still important, but, and obviously,
certainly
videos
it's
still have
more
their
in a
use on
Spotify
YouTube.
kind of world.
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting because it doesn't really matter. Currently now everyone talks about, all the DSPs are the most important thing and streaming's the most important thing. And all. You know what? It's still a mixed bag, all of it. And we continue to see technology has changed this business consistently, from the cassette to the CD to the, right on down to the digital file to the streaming now.
And now back to vinyl.
And then back to vinyl, exactly. Each aspect of this still means something to certain artists at certain times. So the biggest thing that we've all have to learn is diversity in our game as managers. You still need to know a little bit about everything in order to figure out what the best thing is for your act. Like you said, it could be that, you could put a couple of vinyl versions out and still find a way to get to a number one on an artist.
I'm waiting for you to re-release
some artists,
an act
it's
on
important
8-track.
to have a number one, and some artists, not even important to have a number one anymore. So it just kind of depends on who the act is. I find all that stuff challenging, and it basically, to me, as more and more barricades come up in front of us or whatever, I find the whole business gets more interesting. It's never dull. I never
Just
get
a bigger
bored.
puzzle you'll have to figure out how to evolve
Yeah,
fast.
exactly. It's funny. We used to find ways. So, people threw SoundScan at us. Supposedly, SoundScan is perfect, right? It tells you exactly how many records were sold. Found our ways around that here and there.
The multiplier stores and what have you.
Exactly. Weighted stores and, things that you can do at certain levels of retail. I do believe that you have to definitely spend time with each platform that comes up, whether it's the streaming platforms or whatever new thing comes up next. You're going to have to spend the time to learn that part of the game and be great at it. There's no question. As a manager, as a promoter even, you're going to have to figure out how to use any new tool that comes up. But that's okay. I mean, it's like you said, it's just like continually being at school. Some people think it's a pain in the ass, but there's a lot of us that kind of feel like we teach the world so much. We create social trends. We're part of all the activity that goes on. So much of it starts with music. We're on the tip of everybody's tongue. We're on the forefront of everybody's business thoughts. A lot of these big .com guys, the billionaires, the Mark Benioffs of the world, and some of the biggest players, they still play at the music level because they know how much it means. We inspire the world. We're lucky motherfuckers. Let's face it. What we need to do is appreciate that and love it and care for it and work our asses off for it.
Let me ask you about when you're looking to sign an act. What are the things that you're looking for that excite you about an act?
I still look for the unique things. I still look for something that's going to make it stand out. Music that sounds like nothing else. I still look for passion and emotion. I know there's exceptions to that too. There's been some shoegazer moments in my life that might suggest otherwise. But I believe that we're in the business of touching people. So people that have a passionate approach to their art are generally people I want to work with.
Okay, so if an act is trying to break, do you have any advice for them? What does an act need to do before they're ready for a manager?
There kind of has to be like a visible path, a direction, let's say, that you need to have down before you need a manager.
So they kind of need to develop a story a little bit of what it is?
The rest all happens anyway. The story starts developing depending on whether people are attracted to the path. But certainly...
There's got to be a little heat there.
Yeah, I mean, that creates the heat. If you know you're the next singer-songwriter, you still need to have a bit of a direction. You can't say, well, I like a bunch of different styles, so I'm just going to do a little bit of everything. I got a country song, I got a rock song. No, you have to kind of know what you really love and what you really want to do. You have to have that direction down. And if you don't, a good manager will smell it a mile away and he'll say, I'll let this develop. Yeah, these kids are talented, but I'll let it develop for a while.
Speaking of good managers, you've been in the business a long time. You know all the players. Who, in your mind, does it the best?
I'd still have to say that I admire the guys like John Silva and even Cliff and Peter, Basically, strong opinionated people, but they know what they want and they know what they like. And they take on acts they believe in and they can really put an incredible effort into them.
All three of them have maintained their acts at Arena Plus levels.
Yes.
It's not an easy thing to do.
Not at all. And some pretty amazing rosters that
getting there is hard, but staying there is harder.
I would agree with that. Absolutely.
Staying cool for a long time is not an easy thing. And the bands those guys all work with have done that very, very well. And there's got to be a great deal of direction in that. Being Pearl Jam doesn't just happen.
It's true. There's a reason why they've done it more than once. There's probably a reason I've done it more than once, But part of it is conviction, and part of it is you put a lot of thought into these projects, obviously. But you do have to go back to the music each time. You have to remember what you are marketing and who you are. What is it? I mean, what is it that makes the Stones, or Roger Waters and Pink Floyd last over time? It's a real commitment to a direction. It's a real commitment to...
I thought you were going to say great promoters.
Well, I don't know.
That's never the answer, huh?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I did find promoting to be pretty creative. In the beginning, certainly we had to be when we were first starting out and we were promoting
Well, if you didn't get outside the box and figure out how to get that word out cheap, there's going to be no one in the room.
That was just part of it. It's funny, watch that documentary about the Who's managers, Lambert and Stamp. Do you see that?
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. And they took a different angle. They were kind of like showed the band's development through the eyes of the managers. And then basically those two guys wanted to be filmmakers. They wanted to make a movie. So they said, well, let's find a band band to make a movie about. So they found the high numbers and they kind of turned them into a mod band, and they kind of almost created the idea that this was the face of the mods. There were mods and rockers, so they tied into a social scene. And it's kind of what promoting punk rock was like that in the beginning, too. You had to tie into the scene of the kids that liked subversive stuff already. People that were already into Iggy Pop and Bowie and the Ramones certainly were the basis of your kids that would come see punk shows. So those are the kids you had to hire to pass the flyers out. That's the look you had to have around the club. You had to give a place for that whole atmosphere to grow, in order to build an audience further than that.
You had to create the petri dish so it
You
developed.
did, yeah. And that usually helped incubate the excitement around it.
Before I let you go, do you have advice for young generation professionals coming up in the industry, how to get ahead?
Well, these days, I'll tell you what, the internship programs are definitely the way to go, in my opinion. If you got a chance to intern at William Morris, or if you have a chance to intern at my office or Q Prime or something while you're going to college, you really can't miss. If you get there, the other key is be hungry, learn. You're going to need to show people that you really do have the passion for it. And not only that, but if you spend the time and you spend the hours to really learn the most you can while you're there, it's going to pay off. It doesn't hurt to do things like I did on campus too. When the student promoter, certainly there's a budget there and there's a chance to learn. And, you could either take it serious or you go to class. Take your pick. I took it serious. I think that a lot of things are opportunities, that there's more out there now than there was back then. And trust me, the one thing you got to be prepared for, though, when you walk out of school and you get a job at a management company or even at William Morris, that is not going to be the best paying job at first. You're going to have to realize that you're going to have to really pay your dues and work hard and work up from there. But obviously there's a lot of opportunity once you've get some momentum.
First year in the industry, I made $10,000. I thought that was more money than God. Had no idea what real money was.
Exactly.
But I was happy to do it because I got to work with rock and roll, and I think it's that kind of spirit mentality you got to go in with.
There is a much bigger opportunity after you've been in it for a while, but certainly those first years, you got to be prepared for that. You come for the music. That's really the key. You shouldn't come unless you come for the music. The rest could all happen, anything, success, dreams, money, whatever. But you better be here because you love it.
What a great place to start. Thank you so much for taking the time, Peter.
Thank you.
I've sat with some of the biggest people in the industry, and I tend not to get that starstruck, but you kind of got to geek out when you're in a room with Peter. This is just amazing. Cool guy.
Yo, this is Tommy Lee. Yeah, that T Lee. And you're listening to Promoter 101. Fucking turn this shit up, bitches.
Celebrating some birthdays this week, Dan.
Monday, AEG's Max Adler, Mark Solis, and agent Jerry Gerard.
Tuesday, Promoter 101's wishing happy birthday to Bruce Eskowitz and manager Russell Carter.
Wednesday, Steve Heath, Numos, Jason Lasviness, Home Freeze, Tim Fouts, Paradigm's Matt Runner.
On Thursday, we got our Matthew Broderick lookalike, Mr. Josiah Albertson, wishing you happy birthday.
Friday, Justin Bieber tour manager David Klein, John Reese, manager Eric Newsom, Bill Young Productions John Schultz, and Paradigm's Jason Kupperman.
On Saturday, rounding out the week, a happy birthday from us to AEG's Danny Sachs, Mr. Jake Snyder, Triple Eights, Whitney Bond, and agent Larry Carlson.
Happy birthday to all you from the gang at Promoter 101.
Hello, this is Sarah Mertz.
Rick Barrow.
Nick Light.
Mark Geiger.
This is Lee Anderson.
Kevin Lyman.
John Giddings.
Jim Runge.
Jeff White. Brian Zisk. Chuck Randall.
Brian O'Connell.
Andrea Johnson.
Adam Parsons.
Darielle Hyatt.
Ben Mensch.
Jamie Miller.
Billy Wayne Davis.
Brandon Frankel.
Mitch LaFon.
Jake Gould. Gary Smith. Jeff Cohen.
You are on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
If you want to reach out to us, you can send us an email at any time to steiny@promoter101.net.
Our next episode, we're going to feature legendary rock agent Troy Blakely, family show manager and producer Jonathan Shank from Red Light Management, and Sixth Man CEO Anthony Diaz is going to give us a little insight on music festivals at sea.
That's going to do it for us for a while, but we'll be back next week at the same place, and you can bet your last dollar it's going to be a stone cold gas, honey. I'm Dan Steinberg, and as we part, we wish you love, peace, and sold-out shows.
Hi, this is Vince Bannon on Promoter 101, coming to you from wonderful Hollywood, California.
Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da